Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. There is currently a major sleeper weapon in Warzone that, whether you're on Rebirth or Caldera, is going to have a better TTK than basically every other single gun in the game. The trick is, it's not easy to use. You might have guessed it, we're talking about the FAL. Today I wanted to break down just how good the FAL is now that we have 300 health across the board on both maps, and compare it against some of the other top meta weapons in the game right now. As we go through it all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD. So feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. And also right now, all weekend long, my G Fuel discount code WhosImmortal is boosted to get you 30% off your entire order. So if you want to grab anything at all from the G Fuel site, code WhosImmortal has you covered. So naturally, we got to go ahead and break down the stats here. Of course, we're on True Game Data as always. Shout out to Tony for putting in the work and getting this information for us so we can break things down so easily in videos like this. Obviously, we're looking at 300 health. This 250 no longer matters, and while I do think the FAL is great on both maps, I especially think it is dominant on Rebirth. Obviously, it has the same stats and same properties on both maps, but because so many fights on Rebirth are between like 0 and 50 meters rather than Caldera where it could be 0 to 200 meters, the FAL just has a better potential to be more effective. You know what I'm saying? It's obviously easier in those 50-meter engagements than at 200. Of course, we're looking at combination shots to be the most accurate when it comes to a realistic TTK, and we're comparing it versus things like the Owen gun, the Vargo, the Type 100, and the Bar. I wanted to take some really good TTK close-range weapons and some really good TTK long-range weapons and basically break down how the FAL is better than all of them. So what we want to look at here is the orange line. Now, right away, I'm sure you're going to notice, yes, through the first 21 meters, the Type 100 has a faster TTK than the FAL. Now, how important is that? Well, obviously, you're using the Type 100 through about 20 meters and not really beyond that because it is an SMG. And this build, especially with the 36 Russian short, doesn't have an incredible damage per mag. Also, the recoil is still a little bit tricky. It's about equally as hard weapon to use as the FAL, just for different reasons. Obviously, the FAL is a higher skill gap weapon because you have to go through and learn to spam it. If you're not shooting this thing fast, this video doesn't really apply as much, right? You have to have a good trigger finger and be able to spam this thing while maintaining accuracy, whereas the Type 100, it's just difficult to control, and it's got a small magazine, so you have to be mindful of that as well. But yeah, up close, it's a sub. I'd expect it to do slightly better, but it's not better by all that much, right? And it also drops off earlier. Now, kind of funny, the Type 100 has a very similar TTK with the FAL through all ranges, but like I just said, you're not using the Type 100 past 20 meters, whereas the FAL, you could use it all the way to any distance you want. With the setup we're going to talk about today, I'd say, again, through the first 50 meters is probably the most prime. But when you look at some of these other builds on here, for instance, the Bar, we all know how crazy good the Bar is right now. Good TTK through the first 30 meters, but the FAL is better. Bar only beats it for a whopping 3 meters, and then the Bar ends up dropping off a little bit more. FAL does not. You look at something like the Vargo, which is very solid as well, has a great base range. It only becomes even with the FAL for about 10 meters or so, and then it drops off. Something like the Owen gun, if you were trying to use the FAL up close, it's not even that close. Like, it drops off at 18 meters and then is significantly worse than everything else. So the FAL is such a unique weapon in the sense that, yes, it is super hard to use because it's semi-auto, but it is also one of the most versatile guns in the game. You can build it to be very aggressive for close range, medium range, and even some long range, all essentially in the same setup, I would say, as well. Like, you can build one loadout that obviously we're going to break down here today that kind of checks all the boxes for ranges. And if you were to look at something like damage per second here on this graph, you get a very similar result where the Type 100 and the FAL are clearly the two top choices. The Type 100 obviously especially good up close, but the FAL, if you're landing your shots here, it's going to be tough to beat unless you're going up against a good player who's also incredibly accurate. What's curious about this, though, is if we go ahead and we look at something like the damage per mag, the FAL and even the Type 100 are lower here because they do have smaller magazines. It caps out at like 30 for the FAL. However, there's sort of an asterisk on that. Because it's semi-auto, you're not going to burn through those 30 bullets as fast as you would on something like the Type 100, even these other guns like the Owen gun or the Vargo and what have you, because they're fully auto. Obviously, that damage per mag and how quickly you have to stop and reload is a lot more dependent on how fast you can shoot the weapon. And also with the FAL, The sleight of hand perk is probably one of the craziest things in the game because it gives you an almost instantaneous reload. Like you guys saw in the intro clip, if I go to reload the gun, it is mag out, mag in, split second blink of an eye, it's done. So it's weird because on paper the FAL wouldn't always look the best if you looked at something like a damage per mag stat, but when it comes down to it, it's just so powerful and high risk, high reward that it actually works better now than ever before with 300 HP. So when it comes to an actual loadout here, what are you looking for? Well, like I said, I want a versatile setup because I want to be able to pair this FAL with a sniper if I wanted to, but also with a sub if I wanted to, and have versatility to use it close range, mid range, and even in some long range fights as well. So for instance, we want to go for monolithic suppressor and of course the marksman barrel like we saw on the graph there. The other barrels here you might say are probably better for close range, like the para, better ADS, better movement, ultralight, better ADS, but the cons on these I'm not really a huge fan of. Worse control, which if you're spamming it gets a little bit worse, and worse velocity all across the board. For some of those mid-range fights, you don't necessarily want to lose that because with other, Vanguard guns in the game that have crazy velocities, you don't want to fall too far back of those. So to me, marksman works just fine. It does help out with the velocity and the range some for mid-range, and you get some better control, and we can gain back some of that movement and whatnot. So we're staying off the radar. We have good control based already. I also really like the tack laser on this. Already getting back a better ADS speed here and some better aiming stability. Makes it very aggressive and very fast paced. For the magazine, you definitely want to go for either 24 or 30. Obviously 30 will be a tad bit slower. Both of these are pretty similar to one another, especially if you're spamming. You'll have to reload here and there, but it's a lot easier to plan reloads when you have control of every single bullet rather than a fully auto weapon like the bar or the Owen and whatnot. And then lastly, like I said, sleight of hand on this thing is utterly insane. Now this setup in particular, kind of interesting, right? This is not something you'd necessarily say, okay, I'm going to use this for super close range. The thing is though, if you absolutely want to pair this with just a sniper, you can change one thing and it becomes a lot more aggressive. Take off tack laser, put on no stock, boom. You've got now a close to mid-range FAL that's going to be ridiculously good. If you want that general versatility, like I said, this tack laser setup, not the slowest, surprisingly, great for mid-range, even some long range. You don't need an optic here. The iron sights, in my opinion, very clean, good for close and medium range as well. If you wanted a long range build, again, drop tack laser, throw on the VOK 3x optic, although I don't feel like the FAL is necessarily the best long range gun because of semi-auto. Close to mid-range is really where it's going to thrive. But the versatility of this gun, combined with the unique statistics that it has that make it so powerful and have such a solid TTK, definitely make this a sleeper in my opinion. It's hardly picked by anyone, but it comes out to be one of the best guns in the right situations if you know what you're doing with this gun. It can be such a fun weapon to use, but also such a rewarding weapon to use at the same time. So with that 300 HP update on both maps now, I would highly recommend trying this out and seeing just how well you can do with it. It's going to take some time to get used to, but man, does it pay off once you're really good with it and you can spam it and control it and finesse with it, because as we saw, it's going to melt everyone. With that being said, that is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD. So feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.